At last we have exited from the Terminus systems, and Jack Bauer will return again sometime soon here on V'ger Please, a heinous trip at Warp 5. My name is Joseph.
Who would have thunk it? I love Star Trek Enterprise. I'm your co-host, Peter.
It was a long road to get from there to here.
Many changes of the heart had to take place to pull this TV show out of the fucking sewage gutter. I'm talking like old Europe poop flowing down the side of the street gutter.
Oh yeah, like Paris in the 1400s. Yeah,
like this is why you want the plague, because that's how you get the plague. Shit in the street and rats.
This is the season 3 rip. If you've never joined us before on a rip, this is where we lay to rest the latest season of Trek that we have reviewed and rip it as we do so in an appropriate fashion. And on the menu
it's
today,
one of our better entendres.
Yeah, it is. It's probably our best. Let's call it the. And it was your idea, by the way. You coined this many years ago. So credit where credit is due. What's on the menu is season 3 of Enterprise, and this is basically the biggest heel face turn of all time as far as broadcast television is concerned. Those first 2 seasons were rough. They were difficult. Your hope had completely exited from your voice sometime around the 8th bad gunfight in the middle of season 2. And here we are.
It wasn't even the bad gunfights, because we could sit and laugh at the bad gunfights. It was, gosh, if we were to just look at season 1 and season 2, it was just lots of wastes of time, man.
Yeah.
Squandered potential. Stories that could have been cool. Hoshi Transporter episode. I'm looking at you.
Vanishing Point. What a anti-banger that was.
Shit that should have been great. This is the show where you could do the thing for the first time, and you've had fucking decades to think about these stories and to see what they would give us. And just miserable character stories, and then to get into this where in some ways we were getting better character stories, and other ways we were just focused on a really tight, concise plot where all the pieces moved into place at the correct times. And really, it felt like just a master course in good storytelling. You talk about serialization, and serialization is a very interesting concept. Serialization, syndication, the intersection of storytelling and production and revenue, right?
To be clear, serialization is different than syndication. Syndication is merely a distribution method.
But they kind of go hand in hand, because when you have something like this that's highly serialized, where if you miss the episode beforehand, it could potentially mean problem for ad revenue and syndication, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're different concepts, but there's a strong correlation between the two of them in terms of network viability and the production staff willingness to put this stuff on. So there are some bold fucking choices that started happening in season 3.
Well, because, the show is not syndicated, famously. It is a network television show. And they have a heavily serialized Star Trek series. It was called DS9, and it was in fact syndicated. So I think they looked back at DS9 with a lot of time then at that point between when it ended and when they were making the creative decisions here, and said, these first 2 seasons aren't working. Let's go the DS9 route. Let's get a little grittier. Let's get some dirt under the fingernails. Let's tap into some, maybe a little bit of current day, but in a Trek way. And we can deliver on a better product that way that keeps the audience engrossed and keeps them wanting to come back week after week to keep up with the storyline.
We've talked about this stuff before. You and I are watching this TV show in ways that the creators never thought possible. TiVo was in its infancy when Enterprise started getting to about the point of season 3. And of course, you could always sit around, record this stuff on the VCR and go back and watch it so you never missed an episode. But there certainly weren't servers sitting there ready for video on demand for people to go through and watch this. So it's some bold choices to have really the entire back half. And when we were going through trying to pick the best episodes for the season, it's hard to pluck them out because the last, 6 episodes feel like one really long episode.
Yeah, basically from Azadi Prime through the rest of the season.
Minus E2, maybe.
I mean, even that felt like a continuous part of the story because E2 happens specifically because they're going to a place that's linked to the rest of the plot.
But if this was Mass Effect, I think E2 is certainly DLC. It's good DLC.
It's a side quest. It's a side quest.
It's a side quest. You could have popped that in. But do they do enough to keep you up to date if you missed an episode? I would say no. I would say even with the previously on, it's not enough to do the show service, and I think things are going to slip through the crack. But again, maybe you can speak to viewership numbers. I think at this point they realize there's no casuals watching this thing. You got hardcores in there, and they start catering to it, and that catering starts too late. I think if they would have came out of the gates with this thing, where they're at in season 3, it would have been a very different story for Enterprise. Who knows if it would have been a different story for UPN.
I will say that the story of season 3 of Enterprise's ratings is that of consistency and retention, which lends to your argument. At the beginning of the season, 4 million people watched the episode The Xindi. 3.91 million watched 0 Hour. You kept your people. You kept your audience. They watched the whole thing. Because all of these numbers are very consistently in the high 3s to low 4s, with one exception. The best rated episode of the season was Regine.
I was going to say Regine.
Can't imagine why that is.
I can give you guessed it, folks, 2 big reasons.
2 big reasons related to a mother who was in Playboy.
Yeah.
Not her. Her mother.
Thanks. I read the Memory Alpha. I know. I'm stunned that the number is not finishing at exactly what the first started at, if not higher. No, I'm not. If you were the hardcore Trek guy who stayed with Enterprise, and I was the hardcore Trek guy who watched the first 2 seasons, or I'm sorry, watched the first season, and then I noped the fuck out. And then you came to me at work and we're sitting there around the water cooler or whatever we used to do back in the pre-Web 2, the pre-Web 2.0, and you had sent me a was there Facebook? No, was there MySpace? No, MySpace was after. MySpace was like what, 05?
MySpace was like the first one.
Yeah, but I don't know if
it might have been live journaling. That might have been it.
Live journaling was certainly there, but I want to say I didn't make a MySpace until I had graduated from college in like 04. If you had gone to me and said, dude, listen, you need to get back in Enterprise because this season 3 was hot shit, I'd have laughed in your fucking face and that would have been the end of it. So I think even with as badass as this season was, I'm sure that there are people watching this thing real time trying to drag old viewers back in, and they were rightfully resistant to any of that.
I think, though, that the fact that they kept everyone that was still watching demonstrated that this idea had merit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, you didn't, the bleeding stopped. Like, you did finally capture your audience. It's just, a fraction of what it was when you started.
So, let's move on now. Is this good Star Trek?
Yes. Yes, very much so. I think it becomes great Star Trek, particularly as you get into episodes like Similitude, back half of the season. And that's something we're going to touch on, I think, which is like the first half of this actually is kind of still not great. And by the time you're finished, you kind of forget that because the back half was just the oops all bangers part of the season. And just that those memories stick with you. They make the turn at around Similitude and they get into like doing Proving Ground and then Harbinger, Doctor's Orders. Azadi Prime on, like that's where the good stuff happens.
I don't know if I would call this good Star Trek. It's great TV, but still, even after season 3, I don't know if in my heart I consider this Trek on the same level with Next Gen, Voyager, TOS. And I can't put my finger on why. Maybe it's the pioneering of it.
It
Maybe
just
it's
feels
just
too modern, like it feels like it's too close to current day. Everyone's a little bit too close to the people That always was the weird part to me, is that Enterprise, and I get that's the purpose, right? This is pre-Federation Earth, so they're more like Earth now. They're not as enlightened yet.
That's a great point. It is not a post-scarcity society, and I think that is the fundamental base layer of what Star Trek is. It is an enlightened humanity that almost in itself feels alien. And I can't say this to DS9, but certainly early Next Gen and Voyager, these do not feel like people that live in our world. Their
Right.
views are radically different. Their morals are radically different. And I'm not saying that the people on Enterprise NX-01 are shitty or whatever, but they don't have that weird, lofty, Roddenberry-like uh, alien quality to them.
Yeah, I think alien quality captures the spirit that I'm feeling quite accurately. Um, People like Picard, Riker, they seem unearthly in their capacity to be selfless leaders. It's why you admire them as characters. It's why you root for them. It's why you follow them. It's why they're engrossing. But they're the product of an environment that raised humanity to be that kind of person because there was no conflict over a lack of resources anymore. DS9's brilliance is that it comments on that fact, like openly. Like, you humans are like this only because you lack for need. And the moment need will reassert itself, you're going to snap back into being terrible sons of bitches. And that's exactly what happens. And this is, we're not quite there yet, but we've grown. We're growing. We want to grow more. And where I say this is good Star Trek is those episodes where you actually get to see the proto Federation ideals start to reassert themselves through the actions of Archer and the crew. Similitude is my, spoiler alert, it's my favorite episode of the season because I think it captures that essence the best.
Is this good storytelling? Or is this just really good pulp fiction and fantasy? You know, this was a radical departure for many reasons from the first 2 seasons. If I sit here and I try to describe the plot lines or the story arc to my wife, which I really haven't, but I've been thinking in my head a lot about it. It's genius as it's coming across the screen, and I'm watching it over the course of a 45-minute episode, trying to tell someone about this stuff. The false prophet guardians / sphere builders, the Xindi, how they got played, used, chewed up, and spit out. Some of the side adventures they go on, the sickness, the aliens, like there's a Flash Gordon like quality to it where I have to look at the first 2 seasons and say, man, were these things just so fucking bad that I was like starved for good content with this story framework and just thrived in it? Or is this genuinely great television and epic storytelling?
I think that there is some constraints worth noticing, but what I think pushes it over the edge to actually being good storytelling is personified in Degra specifically. Because Degra is someone who's in the season from almost the beginning. You get to know him when they're having the Terminus System Legion of Doom meetings, and you don't know very much about him basically at all until the middle of the season, even though he's a pretty consistent presence, even if it's just like one scene at the beginning. But the brilliance of it and what makes it good storytelling is by the time you start to learn things about him, it actually puts his prior scenes in a much different context. It makes you go back to them and say, "Oh, this is a man who had doubts. This is a man whose actions suddenly make a great deal more sense because he was never really in on what he was party to begin with. He's a family man. He's got blood on his hands. He does not like
He's
that
an
he's become
educator.
yeah, he's become a mass murderer, and he is discomforted by this. And now he's going to be an exterminator of an entire species, and he doesn't like it. And he's slow rolling the whole thing because of that moral doubt. And you don't even know that he has any of that doubt for most of the season. But then you find out he's had it the whole time, and then you look back and say, "Oh wow, the writers, they knew that. They knew that's where they were going, and they weaved it in." That's good storytelling. That's
Do you think that you could take season 3 and put it in front of some sort of a college course on script writing or storytelling, and that you could show it to non-Trek enthusiasts and that they would come away with strong feelings for it?
that's an excellent question. I think of all of the Star Trek seasons, this might be the easiest one to do that with. But I'm not certain the answer is yes. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but I think that this is probably your best shot at it. I mean, I think you would. I honestly think though that with that question, it would be hard to do that with almost any season of Trek.
I agree that this would be the best shot because it does feel divorced from traditional Trek because it is accessible to themes and modern day. So people who might not be sci-fi enthusiasts should be able to attach on. And I think if you could get people to give it a fair shake and divorce any sort of preconceived notions about Trek, that it would ultimately end up being an enjoyable. I don't know, man. Again, maybe I'm just looking through this with rose-colored glasses, or same way we would get into Voyager, where it's like I want this to be good so bad because I've watched so much bad that like I've got an amazing amount of forgiveness and co-optaism in me.
Yeah, we have been co-opted ourselves. Like we were beaten.
Gone native.
Yeah, we've been beaten so hard by this thing. We've decided to start stalking it with them in the jungle anyway. Next one you had written down here that I wanted to cover. I like. What made the Xindi work versus all the Voyager original species?
The who are the Phage guys? The Vidians, Kazons. We talked about this a little bit in maybe the last 2 or 3 episodes ago. The Vardoir, the Skeevians were supposed to be in there. Who were the garbage men?
Oh, the Malorn.
The Malorn. Those guys all, by the end, came around and turned into pretty cool species. And just as they started realizing the potential of the species, they threw it away, and then they dragged the Borg back in and peed all over the Borg and just ran that legacy into the dirt. The Xindi work for me because you don't know everything up front. And I think they do a slow burn on releasing information about them, and it all just falls into the right place, the right way. I think they look alien for real, and maybe that's because CGI came down in price a little bit, so shit like the aquatics and the insectoids, like really getting away from humanoids.
Yeah, and the idea that there's this 5 species, sentient species that evolved on a single planet, and
Amazing.
that it's almost unique in the universe. Like that just never happens.
I can only tell you there's the Xindi, and then the fucking Naboo with the humans and the Gungans.
Oh, that's it's Star Wars. Oh wait, well there's the episode when they the Mr. Dear Doctor, that's another one.
Yeah, don't worry, I know about that one. And sticking with Star Wars, I do feel that season 3 borrowed real heavy from the prequels, and I think that the set design, the color selection, the antagonism, distrust, and the overall villainy. We joke around about the Legion of Doom and Geonosis, but the Xindi Council meetings feel a lot like the Separatists out of the prequels in the right ways. And I think there's always been a lot of borrowing of concepts between Star Trek and Star Wars, and this was a good example of them doing it the right way. And that gave them a nice blueprint on how do you tell the story and how do you present this evil faction in a compelling way. Versus Kmart Klingons and just trash people with shit in their hair.
The focus helped a lot. I mean, the real problem with Kazon / Vidians and so on and so on is there were individually great episodes for all of those races. Like the last Milan episode was great. Dr. Pell and everything with that in the Vidians was great. There was even like that good Kazon episode when it was the guy who played Nog was stuck on the planet with Chakotay, and you got kind of like their backstory. So they had times where those all worked too, but then you'd have that one episode, then you move on to the next thing, and you move on to the next thing because it's always independent, non-serialized storytelling. This was 24 episodes where there was one fucking bad guy, and it was called the Xindi. And piece by piece and inch by inch, you got to learn about them. Even when they weren't on screen, they were on screen. They were in the minds of the characters. They were talked about.
It's definitely the mystery, and it's definitely the slow presentation of facts about them. If Archer had gotten within the first 2 episodes someone who can say, oh, listen, there was a world called Xindi, and there were 5 sentient species on it, and they were in a big civil war, and they blew it up, and they're kind of scattered now, and they even right up to the very end, finding out that the sphere builders were revered pseudo-gods, like just great storytelling. The Avians, everything else. Storytelling, dungeon mastering, right? Like sitting there with your group of players and saying, I've got a big plot, here's the bad guys, and each adventure you're going to get a little bit more to the picture, and you're going to be able to sit there and wonder, what is this thing? How could there be reptilian DNA? But there's like really, really cool stuff. Going back to what was the slave colony Trillium D farm? That's where they got their first.
Yeah, the Xindi, the very first episode.
Oh, yeah. Where the Makos beat the fuck out of everybody.
Yeah, the Makos made a grand appearance in that first episode. Rappelling down, Tonfa takedowns,
Snipers.
Headshots. They really set the tone from that point forward.
Sure did. I want to talk about Trillium D real quick.
Yeah.
What an amazing commodity and storytelling device to roll out this season. This critical magic rock that is going to allow Enterprise to transverse this extremely dangerous portion of space where anomalies are riddling the Enterprise with terrible CGI, wounds that can twist your fucking face off and deform your body, kill you, rip the hull apart, cause warp core issues. Trying to find it, the adventures in getting close, trying to synthesize it, blowing up, and then ultimately the reveal that Vulcans are deathly allergic to this stuff, but then also your Vulcan is
maybe sneaking into the airlock so that they can get their access to their crack rock.
I can't think of anything else in Star Trek that has been that good of a season-long plot element. Yeah, I can't, and you go to Voyager, which was a show about limited commodity, hardship, dearth and duration, and because of its episodic format, they could never photon torpedoes. It didn't matter if you only had 5 last episode, you're back up to 29 this episode. The jokes about shuttlecraft and everything else, like it was interesting to see Enterprise come and be like, yeah, no, here's this thing, we want it, we got to work for it, we get it, we can't use it, there's still value, blah 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 blah. Really cool.
So let's get into our awards, Peter. Let's bring to the people that which they're here for, and that is some build-ups and some takedowns. First one listed, best character. I know who you're going to say, so I'm going to give a different opinion. It's Trip. I don't think it's close. I love Degra, I do, but it's actually Trip. Uh, Connor Trenier carries the dramatic weight of the entire season, and he does so flawlessly, in my opinion. Similitude would be the best episode for him of the season, except there's also The Forgotten. So it's like he had two absolute bangers, and the whole journey he goes on with the loss of his sister, ultimately his ability to confront Degra on that personally, just great, just fantastic. His relationship with T'Pol, everything with him worked.
You're not wrong, but I'm not going to deviate from Degra as my pick for the best character. He comes in, every scene he's in is juice. It's good. Guy's got an amazing character arc. He goes from antagonist to ally in one of the smoothest transitions that, the smoothest yet wildest transitions ever. And looking at all the great stuff you're talking about, Trip, and thinking about why I'm not picking him, I think it's easy to see why, again, he's not hailed as one of the best Star Trek characters of all times. Even if everybody did see Enterprise to the same exposure level as Next Gen and at this point Voyager, his stuff is subtle and it's emotionally deep. He portrays wounded well, but he runs short on like badass bark down moments that is what you think about out of like Picard or Cisco.
That's true. I would agree. He's really good on the deep emotional stuff, but when it comes to being the snap to military man, he's a lot worse than the best examples in the Trek canon of actors.
He's great on the down though. It's a subtle performance. It's great in the moment, but it gets drowned out by other people's big scenes elsewhere. Also, too, like when you're talking about like characters you really remember and gravitate towards, I think those cinematic like big movie presentations really ring heavy. And you got a lot more resources going into script writing, directing, set pieces, blah, blah, blah. Picard going on about, the Borg stop here in First Contact, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
those big Shakespearean moments. Absolutely.
Right. Worst character.
You want to go right to worst character? Okay, so in 20 words or less, why is it Reed? Because I don't think there's another choice to be made. It's like Mayweather lapped him just merely by not having any episodes, not having any focus, just showing up, smiling, me a charming doofus, tackling Hayes on the bridge, like
tackling everybody on the bridge, man. You get too close to that guy, you're gonna taste. He's like the chomper on the chain, right?
Yeah,
and Mario,
those coiled obsidian anacondas on his arms. He's gonna come out and get you.
Reed is a miserable fucking guy, and they do some cool stuff with him in the end of the season where he finally starts to grow a little humanity as he gets overwhelmed by all the death riddling Enterprise. Just everything before then, and we've rewritten this guy many times. The right combination for this character would have been displaced science officer with a chip on his shoulder that it fell to a Vulcan, and he's stuck playing second fiddle. But this is not a military guy. This actor does not have a commanding military presence.
Yeah, they just cast the wrong guy. He's just not correct. I feel comfortable saying this at this point. He's not effective in the role that he has been given, and it doesn't change. They give him actually a little bit better backstory in the last season, but it's still not quite right.
If you took Colin Trenier and you put him in as Reed instead, do you think he could have saved that character as Reed? I think it's just a dud concept.
No, you just got to find the right actor. We've talked about the chief of the boat character could have been Mayweather, right?
Should have been Mayweather.
Right. So Okay, well, let's say Mayweather's still Mayweather. Mayweather's still just the wet behind the ears boomer, goofy kid, right? Well, then your second option for that guy should be your tactical officer. Like Reed should have been a Mako from the start. He should have been recruited by Archer from the military to say, I don't know what we're going to get ourselves out there. I want somebody leading our security team that has been involved in real conflict and has a military mindset, and that's like a real reach
Okay,
for
well then
him.
just take Hayes.
Right? It should have been Hayes. Like that is actually who your character in this role should have been. Like if you got Stephen Culp to play Reed, that would have worked.
Drop the insecurity about the Makos coming in because that was just another sissy whiner point that bogged him down.
Right. And you could have just had Hayes, you can even say he's Major Hayes. He's still a military officer. He's just assigned to Enterprise. The first 2 seasons, they get back and he's like, Captain, you need the dudes. You need guys like me.
Yeah.
Like it's time. So you bring him on board. And then your story arc becomes him becoming more like a Starfleet officer and teaching his military guys to like learn to do things the Starfleet way.
Oh, where's my fucking pen?
Where's the sound effect? There it is.
You put that Mako in there from the beginning. You take all this Reed's detached and nobody's anything knows about him. It's because this guy feels like he's an outsider because he's military and everybody else is an exploratory scientist. And that's the rift between him and the crew.
Yeah.
He starts to bond with the crew finally by the end of season 2. Season 3, shit hits the fan. Archer says we need to bring in more Makos. And now Hayes, who has lost his hard edge, has reservations about his peers coming on board. There's a feeling that he is going to be judged poorly and viewed as an outsider to his own people. And then you could have even folded in this thing that the Makos resent Starfleet because the Makos see that is an end of them as a military unit,
which is the primary motivation of the villain from Star Trek Beyond.
Sure.
Like exactly that. So sure. They ended up actually finding this line just 20 fucking years later.
Right. So yeah, Reed was the bad part, and I will say that Reed in season 3 is considerably better. He's hugely better than he was in season 1 and season 2.
Way more. He's just still the worst.
Well, yeah, he's
the rising tide lifted all the boats. He's just still the lowest one.
And I mean, there's not even any guest actors I think that came through that really jump out to me as like, or characters that I'm like, man, that guy was really fucking terrible. Like even Pop-Tart Fuckface.
I was gonna say even Count Molestula was more interesting than Reed.
Sure, yeah. Awful episode, but it was a good character.
So speaking of Reed, worst gunplay award.
This is a write-in. Man, hard to pick from, right?
I'm going with the shootout at the Not Okay Corral from North Star. Yeah, the Magos did not acquit themselves well that day against jabroni cowboys with 6-shooters.
Oh, they equipped themselves fine. The people they brought to the fight are just the fucking worst. There's bad OK Corral lady who fails several more times. Should have been her that got fucking zapped in the Xindi sphere by the robotic arm, not Hawkins. I'm going to go with my Reed award for poor gunplay to Reed himself in Anomaly when the space pirates are raiding the ship and he gets into that ridiculous gunfight in the shuttle bay where he should have bingoed that fucking guy, but instead like shoots everything but him. Real cringe.
We did also have a request for a return to our worst form of sexual exploitation award. I will say Enterprise season 3 dialed all the way down. Went from like an 8 to a 4 on the sexual exploitation. They really behaved themselves for the most part. What would be your pick here?
The radical departure. I mean, when you have an episode that is so gratuitous that it doesn't even need the decontamination bay.
Yeah.
Regine, which not a bad episode.
No.
And it's a real fucking shame that Regine as a character, I mean, she's smoking hot and she's fun to see on screen, but I think that character's little redemption arc there towards the end she would have been a great wild card in the back half of the season as a benefactor. But man, when she's just going room to room, dragging as many people into her like sexual invasive mind probes while 3D scanning their body, specifically like her hustler vignette with T'Pol. Wow.
I mean, I guess I I didn't pick that, and I didn't pick T'Pol taking her clothes off when she finally fucks Trip, because in both of those circumstances, while it was very sexy, it was not exploitive. It was in purpose to the plot of the episode in a
Are you
way
talking about when her boobs are just hanging over his head and she's rubbing his abs or whatever?
that that may
There
have.
was a lot of body massages I think we've forgotten about over
It's
the
true.
weeks.
That's true. There was some foot stuff. There was all at the beginning of the episode, and it was in the first half of the season, and that was like infinity time ago. Uh, I think the worst sexual exploitation moment was Hoshi and her hothing, because there was no purpose for it whatsoever. It's like, why are you wearing that? Why did you come down to Count Molestia's planet with that? That just doesn't make sense. That it reminded
Why?
me of when her top had to fall off in season 2.
Why
Like,
do you even have those clothes
yeah,
on the ship
why? Why?
in the mission circumstances you are? There was a scene where you're clearing stuff out of your cabin so you have more room for books and tools and resources for the mission. Yet you still have a footlocker full of fucking I don't know, skanky Susie's discount dresses.
It's like, you think you're going to get to the Xindi homeworld and hit the club? What the fuck are you doing? So that to me is worse than Regine. Even if Regine was much more sexually explicit, it served like they wrote into it. They created an episode around it. I'll take that over Hoshi's just randomly wearing hothing at Count Molestia's planet.
Hoshi's hothing, I can't. If you're an international audience too, like hothing, it's like clothing, but it's a hoe. It's hothing.
I'm hoping that even our national audience parsed that one.
I listen. I just want to make sure that
It's true.
Sometimes the audio gets a little garbled. People don't really hear what we're saying. I mean, that's to me, it's more of a plot hole than it is sexual exploitation. Because even whatever. Enough on that. Where are we going from here?
Top 3 episodes. This is the big one. This was tough.
This is the toughest it has ever been in the history of V'ger Please.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Honorable mention for me, Proving Ground. I think that the whole angle with Shran in that episode is awesome. I think Shran the frenemy is a great subplot throughout Enterprise overall. It's probably the best parts of season 1 and season 2.
Absolutely.
And him showing up and then him being there to double deal, but then feeling bad about it, and then kind of letting Archer get away with screwing him over on purpose because he does like him, and he does like that he's done him favors.
The animosity with his superior officer,
that they made him do it, and he doesn't like it. All plays out super well, and also that Enterprise basically like gets juiced and easily 3-for-1 a bunch of Xindi ships. All good. But these 3 episodes were better. Impulse was my number 3. Just a Terry Metalis, right? Like early Terry Metalis material.
This is the zombie.
Yeah, zombie apocalypse on the Vulcan ship.
Night of the Illogical Vulcans.
It was tense. It was horrifying. It had great action. It fucked with your expectations. Hawkins lives to die another day.
Great sound.
Everything that you experience through T'Pol experiencing it while breaking down adds to the tension of what's going on. Just extremely well executed. It's only third because I feel like the next 2 are better dramatic entries, and I enjoyed that more. And they're both Trips episodes, 2 The Forgotten and 1 Similitude. And I put Similitude first because I feel like that episode required Carter Trenier to approach his own character in a subtly different way that he managed to capture extraordinarily well. And that scene he has in Paul's quarters where he's trying to figure out if the feelings that he has for her are his own or Tripp's was perfect. It was perfect. Everything with Degra is great in The Forgotten, but similitude, tour de force on his part. And also like the kid actor who played Tripp, that was really
how
good.
rare is that?
Like everything that like similitude had the benefit of also just being good, great Archer content, great Phlox content, great T'Pol content. Like the whole thing worked super well, and it had a great moral quandary. It had a bad ending, like that's
Not a happy one.
not a happy one at least, and everyone has to just kind of suck up the consequences.
I really liked Phlox in his role as a father in that, and the difficulty he has to go through, because Phlox very frequently is a real alien motherfucker that makes choices or has viewpoints that starkly contrast what we as humans feel like. It took him a while to warm up to Porthos, if you'll remember. Like, he did not understand the human tradition of like bonding with an animal.
Yeah, and he was gleefully testifying his last will and testament to Dr. Lucas before the final battle against the Xindi. Like, oh yeah, no, it's part of our tradition to get ready to give all of our shit away when we die.
But
Like,
seeing the difficulty he had in Similitude, putting Sim down at the end, relaying that feeling of fatherhood over him,
and how busted up he was that he wasn't going to be able to save him before like Archer even enters the room. Like that he's already like processed the grief before Archer even shows up to be told the bad news. So yeah, Similitude's my easy number one. I just feel like everyone brought their A game that day, and it's a fantastic episode of Star Trek. That is a story you can only do in Star Trek, and they performed extraordinarily well.
I'm pretty sure they actually got fined by some third-party certification board for defying standing protocols and orders and finding a good child actor for that. Because
yeah. There was a ticket written by the Hollywood police. Sorry, this child actor actually acted well. Is not allowed.
For my top three, my honorable mention, I'm going to go with Countdown, which is just a marathon of an episode.
So much content.
Felt like 3 or 4 episodes. I've never seen any Star Trek where I'm like, was this a 2-parter and I just missed like some credits somewhere? Just great pacing, edge of your seat the whole time, fun watch, and great progression. We got a lot of overlap here, man. I did go with Proving Ground for all the stuff you listed already. You know, the real episode there turning into not the conflict with the Xindi, but the developments between Archer and Shran towards the end when Shran steals the prototype and finding out that there's very naughty plans for this thing, knowing the relationship between the Andorians and the Vulcans and what could happen if this thing goes back to Andoria. And just a great resolution, like genuine surprise storytelling, that they decide to blow this fucking thing up rather than allow it to go back and potentially come back to haunt the Vulcans. Azadi Prime, which kind of marks the beginning of the end of the season 3.
Yeah, the start of the 7-part finale of the season.
Great moments for Archer in terms of showing you what is this character supposed to be as a captain.
Also the pinnacle of his head wounds. I don't think he ever tops the amount of head wounds he receives when he gets interrogated by
No, I mean, making the decision to go on a suicide mission was hard, and the greater the risks, the greater the reward, and he was certainly treated with a
tremendous reward.
A real trip to the fucking the massage parlor there for quite the happy ending to the end of that episode. Nuking the colony from space, hot on the heels of stealing the warp core from the space marks. All the stuff that Paul starts going through, Her erratic behavior, really good fights, just a big turning point in getting Enterprise into that high octane mode. My top pick being Impulse. I like horror movies. I like zombies.
Yes, you do.
I liked
See,
all the stuff.
please watch our review of Reanimator. It's on our feed. It's good.
It's very good. Radical departure from traditional Trek, and I always like scary sci-fi, and we've had it kind of before in some other stuff, but this one really leans in hard. Great Vulcan, and this ties into all the cool shit that Suval had to say earlier
Yeah.
at the end of season 2 as to why the Delphic Expanse is like boogeyman land.
Yeah, you had that little Event Horizon taste, and then you get like the whole serving here. It's like, oh god, they weren't fucking around.
I mean, it's got the weak point that Hawkins is such a bad actor that like he just stinks up all the scenes he's in.
But that scene with the like all the zombies trying to take him off the bridge,
such a subversion, man. Like
he's
man.
just like he's destined to die here, right? And then just doesn't. Like, wow. Terry Metalis don't kill nobody, as we learned.
Well, he killed Shaw.
Yeah, but he's gonna bring him back. He killed Shaw because like
if
it worked at the
fucking time. That renewal, I mean, Kurtzman might kill him.
Speaking of bad Star Trek, what are the bottom 3 episodes of the season?
As hard as it was to pick the top 3, because there's so much easy. Good.
This was easy.
It was easy. It's just a complete role reversal from the first 2 seasons where it was easy to pick the best ones because there were so few. My first pick was North Star, which was not a bad episode if it would have been put into season 1 or season 2. But
it would have been welcome in season 2. It would have been a welcome addition to that season.
Yes, absolutely. You've made such high stakes, and you've got me jazzed about the excitement of hunting down the Xindi and stopping the Death Star from destroying Earth. And then you're going to take me into Westworld, where you're going to LARP cowboys. You are going to have this fucking ridiculous situation where Archer refuses to use technology and wants to keep up this masquerade of we're just cow folk until he repeatedly causes fights. Like, if you remember back to that episode, like them giving him a million outs, like, just go away, please, just go away.
Yeah.
And like going back and like starting these fights repeatedly,
getting
in this big shootout in fucking town square, teleporting himself out, just real eye-rolly shit.
Question: if North Star was in season 2, would have been in your top 3?
I cannot remember the world known as season 2. I've tasted the excellence of season 3, and season 1 and season 2 are just.
I'm just saying,
your third in the fucking rain.
At a minimum, your third worst episode of season 3 probably gets into season 2 and is just at least a pass.
I mean, I track all this stuff on my my chart here, and yeah, that would have been good if not excellent, I think.
Yeah, and I'm just saying that's the bar, right? Like, your third worst episode of this season would have probably been at least a check mark if it was in season 2.
They're different shows. The first 2 shows, the first 2 seasons were about exploration. That was a cool exploration episode. And again, there's really cool shit you could have done with North Star. Oh my God, how are there humans out here? This is so crazy. This could, if we fail our mission, be the last bastion of humanity. Something to tie it in with the fucking plot, but like, oh my God, Earth's going to be destroyed. Instead, we have to help these second-class citizens and fight evil and, you know, the normal Star Trek shtick, while Earth might be like, you take what happened in Hatchery, which is a good reason to stay and fuck around at a pit stop. There was none of that here. And jumping back to like season 2, the best was Dead Stop, which was Truck Stop, right?
Yeah.
Catwalk, Stigma. I don't even remember what Stigma was. Oh, that's our Space AIDS one.
Yeah, I would say I would put that above I would put North Star like at the same level as Catwalk.
What was Ceasefire? Oh, Ceasefire, that's the Andorians and the Vulcans. That was a really good one. Judgment, that was the Klingon one. Yeah, I mean, listen, my goods were Carbon Creek, Minefield, Future Tense, Conamar, Horizon. This definitely would have been a good, if not great, episode in season 2. But season 3 really did not fit the stack, and bad call.
So our number 2 and number 1 are the same. So I'm going to explain my number 3.
They couldn't have been anything other than the same.
In the order that we put them.
I almost feel bad putting North Star on my bottom 3. It was not what I call North Star for season 3. I put it as a meh. It was trash, bad, meh, good, and great.
My number 3 was Exile. This was the Ho Shi Ho thing episode. I liked some of the idea, of course, of there just being this lonely psychic that's desperate for connection with others, and they try to bribe them to get this guy to do things for him, but the actions of everyone involved are so batshit to me,
criminal,
that the episode makes no fucking sense and doesn't work. And I think it's worse than North Star. I think North Star would be my 4th if we were going to extend this out. But
I'm looking at my list. Exile I had as bad. North Star was meh. I don't know why. Like, in my mind, somehow I've kind of forgiven Exile. I think just because it was a fun podcast.
Yeah, we enjoyed making fun of it, and you told that story about the Pop-Tarts and ruined people on Pop-Tarts forever. So, like, maybe that's why we think of you think of the episode more fondly. But
I think it's
real bad,
fucking absurd. There was so much wrong with that episode, and I think we'll cover it more in like plot botches. But yeah, Exile definitely deserves to be on that list.
The other 2, though, what are they?
Carpenter Street, which is where Archer quantum leaps back to Detroit to stop
Detroit with palm trees.
Listen, dude, the palm trees are like the last thing wrong with that fucking episode. I think the real story there would be, as I said during our episode, I want to know why they decided to jerk that guy around on his payments, and I want it to be because the rent was raised on their warehouse and funds became tight all of a sudden.
Right, because they didn't have like a giant oversized trench coat to go like, I'm Vincent adult human man to go like make more money, working at the Ford factory or something like that. Like,
it was a miserable episode to watch. I wish that they had brought the Vulcans in. Like, yeah, it couldn't have been T'Pol's grandmother, but there was still that other Vulcan there. That would have been a really cool way to tie back and make Carbon Creek matter. They didn't. Fuck that episode. Fuck its slow motion, awful fight sequence at the end.
Fuck its 10 minutes about fast food.
Yes.
The only thing I liked was that they went all Benson and Stabler when they decided to interrogate him. That was fun. That was it.
I think might have been one of my most comedic fight moments. And then, of course, the worst episode of the season.
Number 1 with a bullet.
Fucking Extinction.
Madness. Cool. Madness.
Cool. Not cool. It's a Star Trek concept. Hey, here's a retrograde virus that changes the crew into something else. The fucking 8-second conversion from being a human to a bird person. The awful character acting. I admire the dedication of the actors in putting this nonsense on. The terrible way they talked, the bad CGI. I've got more to say about the quarantine zone. Throw this fucking thing in the trash. And of course, the ending and their decision with what to do with the fucking ultimate T virus.
We'll get to that.
There's so much weak as shit potential wrapped up in this fucking episode. This is another episode that would have gone great in season 1 or season 2 because it was a piece of shit and it should be with the rest of the fucking pieces of shit over by the toilet.
It also had nothing to do with the Xindi plot. So it could have legitimately just been in those seasons with about like 45 seconds of dialogue rewritten. I'm going to skip over the next one because I think we've covered Violent X already. Biggest OSHA violation. So, as the resident OSHA expert out of the two of us, because you work more directly in
I put
hazard
people's
safety.
life in hazard all the
Yeah,
time.
like
Yes.
you like lockout, tag out, hand mauling. Like these are
Mhm.
things that you are familiar with. I know of them because I work in an
Yeah.
industrial complex as well, but I'm in a job where I don't have to deal with that stuff.
The fishbone method of discovering the root cause analysis. Yes.
So
Uh,
because you're the expert, I just want to pose one question rather than give an answer. Can there ever be one that's bigger than the Xindi weapon bridge?
I mean, I gotta say, the balcony overlooking engineering, it might not have the true depth that the Xindi Bridge has,
Mm-hmm.
but I think over the course of Enterprise service, that as many people have fallen off of that fucking bridge, that balcony and engineering, as they fell off in this goddamn bridge. But
All right, we'll lay them on me then. What are the OSHA violations?
speaking of falling off of balconies, I'm going to give my award to T'Pol in the cargo. She has to go where it's decompressed, and this was damage, right? Yeah.
Yes. What was damage?
Going into the cargo bay, falling off of a balcony, which is again poor ergonomics and lack of safety restraints, falling her spacesuit, blowing the fucking air hose out, which I think would be like the number one concern in a spacesuit is what happens if someone falls? Is it going to jettison the air hose? And then all of this being in the pursuit of her getting and attempting to smoke space asbestos. Like that's a lot of bad.
Are you saying you would write someone up if they fell off a bridge, ruined their EV suit, and then smoked space crack at work?
A write up for sure. I mean, I certainly understand if they don't dismiss her from work. She is a true space hottie, but there needs to be some sort of slap on the wrist there. Special shout out to Reed sucker jump kicking a subordinate, which is AKA assault. And of course, the classic, I'm going to take off my fucking helmet in a hostile alien environment so I get sprayed with crazy juice.
Yeah, we
And
call
do
that
silly
the
things.
Prometheus. Yeah.
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 The Prometheus maneuver. Joe, what's yours?
I didn't decided not to pick one. As I said, I'd prefer. I wanted to cede this ground to you. You are the person that can.
I
that
do
can
really
speak to
like
that.
your headcanon, though, that the fucking, like, a lot of times, oh, here's the bad guy spaceship. Like, the Death Star in Star Wars having these fucking bridges going to, like, the power pillars or whatever that, TK-427 gets kicked off of or whatever. Like, that's silly for the sake, not silly for the sake of silly. It's bad. The Empire's evil. They don't care about their people. But, like, I like your headcanon that there's these dangerous ass bridges because the aquatics built this fucking thing underwater and they have never fallen off a bridge before, so they don't understand the
They don't
importance of
understand the concept
guardrails.
of bridges, right? They don't understand legs.
They don't understand the need for, like, I don't want to fall off of this thing. Well, okay, I'm not on the bridge now. I'm just flapping my flippers around and swooshing my hands through the air and doing computer programming, however the fuck they do this. That was actually a pretty cool headcanon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I will take that. But when it comes to understanding true OSHA violations, I will always look to your expertise. But another thing you are an expert in, but I have a little bit more purchase as well, is the biggest plot botch of the season.
AKA things to nitpick.
Yeah, well, this is where I'm going to do it this time.
Go for it.
That tends to come out, but I have one that stuck with me all season. And that is the failure to clearly explain the inability of Daniels to
AKA Time Zuck.
to help with the circumstances that they were presented with due to the space-time interference of the sphere builders. You can clearly infer that's what's happening. Daniels says at one point something to that effect indirectly, but they never fully explain, like, no, you don't understand, John, I can't actually help you because none of this is supposed to happen. This is like a real, like, interference in the timeline. There's no going back on the fact that the Xindi attacked Earth, but because time has an inertia, we can still, like, orient this towards the outcome that needs to happen. That's all there. That material is all there. That it's because of the sphere builders and they're transdimensional. They exist out the flow of time and space. So something they do can happen both in the past, the present, and the future. Like, that's all there, but they don't explain it particularly well, and you're kind of left to figure it out on your own.
Time travel is stupid and does not work well for good storytelling most of the time, and I think this is a great example of it. This never really actually like got in the way of me enjoying the season. All the time Zuck stuff felt more like character introspection moments where Archer basically gets a chance to monologue and breathe his internal motivations out, which end up being silly in their own regard. But like also too, Daniel's like, I can't get directly involved in this, but I'm going to get heavily involved
To the point where I
regardless.
tell Archer that he's going to found the Federation.
I send you back in time to fight in Detroit. I'm giving you fucking, doodads from Xindi crewmen on the Enterprise J. Like, what? It's just eye rolling, and it's like, whatever, man. For me, again, I thought it was weak that Rajan never got to come back. That was a plot botch. She had a lot of potential.
Agreed.
The lack of the Helix ship that they've had sitting in the cargo holds, involvement in anything that they're doing when having a cloak would have been real great. That's kind of like the replicator conundrum. Like, it's hard to tell a story when you've got this magic thing that could solve all your problems. Hoshi passing on the crazy telepathy that she could have had if she had stolen that Count Pop-Tarts fucking pylon crystal. Earth's on the line. You could have the ability to like scan the cosmos with your mind reading abilities. But instead she chooses not to rob him after he threatens to kill everybody on the fucking ship. Exile sucks. This is a great example of Exile sucking.
It is.
But the biggest plot botch for me, and just unforgivable. I don't know if I hope I don't use this for weak as shit, although this is a strong contender for weak as shit, and that's the complete lack of any sort of Starfleet presence whatsoever in 0 Hour when they come out. The entire premises of season 3 is that Enterprise is the sole ship that is not huddled around Earth, protecting it from the Death Star threat that's looming overhead. This Hail Mary. All they would have had to do is say at some point, Archer calls forced, which he can do, and say, oh my God, I know where this thing is. Send the cavalry. And I mean everybody. It's do or die. And they're all somewhere far away on the voyage. And it shocks everybody that there's a subspace, whatever their fucking hyperspace conduit that drops them as close to Earth that is. And oh, fuck, it was a big mistake of us to send everybody out. Help us, Enterprise. You're the only ship. Instead, everybody should be there. There's not even fucking like space police hanging out to try and, or you could have like a fleet go with the Death Star and they're off engaging and like they ravage Starfleet and in the end there's
you just need to have the sphere guarded by other ships and they engage Earth Starfleet in a way that allows the weapon to move past them.
There hasn't been,
but there need to be something, or at least an explanation as to why they weren't there.
I can't tell you another plot hole that bad off the top of my head. Maybe I'm sure Voyager did something that might be able to rival that. Oh, right. Janeway deciding getting home was more important than letting the Borg die.
That did happen. Let's do 2 more because we're already past an hour. Change of Heart Award, an Enterprise original. I really enjoyed, actually. I'm going to give a positive Change of Heart award because this was supposed to be derogatory to demonstrate a character flip-flopping, but I'm gonna subvert expectations. Archer going from arresting a pirate in episode 2 to becoming a pirate in episode 19. Like, just the juxtaposition of that guy warning Archer, you're gonna be me. Just give it enough time. This place turns you into me. I thought I wouldn't be me either, and here I am. And there Archer is, Robin from the Space Jabronis. Like, I got to steal this from you. My planet's on the line. I'm out of here. I just thought that was just brilliantly done. He had a change of heart, all right. The guy was fucking right.
I like that all of our entries are focused on Archer.
It makes perfect sense.
I mean, we could say like, oh, to Paul's change of heart from not wanting anything to do with humans to, now she's in love with Trip, and future her is like, oh, marry Trip. But it's like, I don't know. For me, I guess the biggest change of heart, Archer disregarding Daniel's pleas for diplomacy, multiple pleas of diplomacy, to instead of go genocide or, suicide bomb, and push the war effort against the Xindi. He said, like, you got to talk to these guys. And Archer's like, again, with all the time in the world to sit and talk and really think about it, he's just locked into like death, murder, kill, after 2 seasons of being the biggest pacifist baby out there.
Yeah, I mean, that was Trip's role, was to be the death, murder, kill guy. Archer should have been restrained. Archer shouldn't have had to have been convinced that talking is probably the way he's going to get through this.
And he does it a lot, too. Like, you go to the one where there are arboreal manufacturing planet that he doesn't blow everything up after all.
Yeah,
like
that's early on, too.
He's there being reasonable a lot, but as soon as time sucks in there, like, there's a weird chemical that activates in Archer's brain where he's just like, no, I'm a toddler, and God damn it, I'm going to do what I said I was going to do 5 minutes ago.
Lastly, we have the true V'ger Please Award. The one you've all been waiting for. Peter, there's a lot of options. It's time to give out the weakest shit of Enterprise Season 3. And here's mine. Let's say you're a bunch of intrepid space travelers and you find this weird planet. There's this weird
scientists.
No. Yeah, there's this weird disease that mutates humans and other species into a different species and then gives them their like genetic memories, and it's obviously quite virulent. Like, I don't know, maybe in seconds will show its effectiveness, and it's extraordinarily dangerous in every possible way. Why in the fuck would you decide to put that disease on your fucking ship in a little vial and then like package it away for like later just in case?
In a bread box.
Yeah. Like, why in the world would you allow an atom of that nonsense anywhere near your vessel?
You mean you're not considering it a new form of life that needs to be protected and sheltered?
No. It's a dangerous disease. It's like COVID-28. All right? Like, fuck that. No.
Had that been Reed slipping a sample into his pocket and like some real shady shit, like, never know we need to like fucking completely destroy a planet, that's cool.
And absolutely.
Phlox and Archer being like, this represents an alien, a life. We need to preserve this. I need the fucking, take one of these what if episodes like Twilight, while Enterprise is getting fucking knocked around and the shit really kicked out of it, like that thing to get loose and like all of a sudden everything from like deck 8 down is bird people run around clicking and hissing at each other. I thought this was, again, a V'ger Please First, like really difficult for me to pick a legit weakest shit award. Normally there's like something in the season that really just stands out as stupid to the point of offensive. And you've got a solid pick here. Like that's a real, we were pissed about that thing, but it's nothing on the same level as them giving up on the Talaxian moon after 18 seconds of trying the transporter trick that founded the weakest shit award. I thought the choice not to have any sort of memory holdover from Twilight was bad and made it kind of a waste of an episode, especially when there could have been so much good story and drama on screen if Archer had this nagging hint of what would come to happen. I think that would have really explained his steadfast determination to ignore Daniel's pleas for diplomacy. Nazis at the end of the other one, that was just bleh. Please come on. Back to your choice for Extinction. The complete lack of any sort of warning on that planet of stay the fuck away from here is
yeah,
crazy virulent. And if you come on here, we're going to hit you with flamethrowers. The dick move of Archer to leave Mr. and Mrs. Nibley, who I believe was still pregnant, maybe?
I believe so, yes.
With the psycho cult leader that wanted to use Enterprise to
Here's your
murder
blown up
everybody.
planet. See ya.
Real dick move on Archer's on that one. But I think my weakest shit's ultimately going to go back to what we talked about, the lack of Starfleet. I mean, that was your big send-off. And just a gratuitous plot hole and a real what the fuck mess. That's my weakest shit.
But season 3 was not a what the fuck mess. Season 3 was a good time. Season 4, a better time.
I don't believe that. Listen, man, this bullshit.
You didn't believe me that this show was going to get good. Believe me. Season 4, the best season of Star Trek ever made.
Doubt. I'm pushing the X button here.
Putting it down.
This fucking controller at X. Doubt. I'm doubting.
Best season of Star Trek ever made. Is every episode perfect? No. But I would say of the 20 episodes,
the 12 that got greenlit for this?
Yeah. 18 of them are going to be good to great in your book.
Well, only one way to find out, Joe.
Indeed. And you will all be finding out along with us here shortly. You'll first enjoy our Ep 3 reviews of Picard Season 3, which we will be rolling out after you in the 3 weeks after this rip, while Peter and I work on some Patreon content as well as get ready for Season 4. But so you're hearing this as early as September 21st. So you'll start hearing from us on Season 4 on October 19th. And we look forward to bringing it to you then. Peace.